Go. Lauren or Laura?
Laura.
Thank you. Hello, San Miguel County. It is Monday, December 8th at 1:30 p.m. and I am calling to order an intergovernmental meeting. We are entering between San Miguel County, the town of Tara, the town of Mountain Village, and normally we have town of Norwood, town of Ophir. I see Ophir online. Who am I missing? I guess that's about it. Sometimes Sawpit. Anyway, we have an unusual setup today because I didn't like how we would have some electeds up around the tables and then others in the peanut galley. So we thought we'd try this. It may not work as well for our friends online. I apologize for that, but we're just giving it a shot. A reminder to anybody who would like to speak to grab one of these microphones, because that's how we communicate with people online. We can hear each other fine in the room, but the only way they can hear us online is if it's close to our mouth. Present in the room are a mix of people, including elected officials from do I see anyone here from Mountain Village? Not yet. Elected officials from the town of Telluride and the county. I can't see. Everybody's online. Okay, we've got some Mountain Village staff and electeds online, and then all sorts of staff in the room, as well as a member or two of the public and those who are making presentations. We do have a packed agenda, so we'll be moving through it as quickly as we can. We will have quickly a moment of silence, or first a moment of silence for grounding and gratitude. Thank you. And for listening to the shredder outside. The agenda has been posted for a while, so I'm not going to go through it, but unless there's anybody who would like to make a change to the agenda. Nope. Okay, we will carry on. So let's begin with, thank you very much, Telluride Ski and Golf. We have 3 representatives here, including Steve Swenson, John Miller, and Laura Thompson. And they are going to give us an update on what's happening on the mountain and management and so forth. We have about 20 minutes for that. So that should take us to about 5 minutes to 2. Who's going to go first?
I'll get started. So it's Laura Thomas, just for the record.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And I apologize. I do have some slides that I think are helpful for people. And unfortunately, the laptop that I was issued is not letting me attach to Wi-Fi. So I am grabbing these off of my phone. So the information that Mike had asked from...
Would you like to send it to our county email and we can project it for you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Let's see.
Megan, who should she send it to? To Megan, so MEGHANK.
MEGHANK. San Miguel.
CO.gov.
CO.gov. Thank you so much. Okay. Wonderful. So hopefully you get that in a second. Do you want me to wait until you see it? Okay. All right. Okay, I'll get started. And my understanding was that we would present on a few operations items as well as current issues. When we talked, 3 weeks ago, we were mindful that the status of negotiations with the Ski Patrol Union would probably be a topic. So we left space for that because that's continuing to be something that we have some information and that I'm aware that everybody would like to know where things are at. Yeah. Skip to that part, please. So just a little bit regarding operations. As everyone is tracking, we had a very warm, I'm not going to call it unseasonably warm because we live in with climate shift. So we understand we had a really warm first 3 weeks of November. So our snowmaking operation was geared up, staffed up, and ready to roll. It was November 1st. And then soil temps, particularly as well as air temps, were just excessive. And so it didn't make any sense for them to start, blowing snow that would immediately be lost. So that team didn't really get started in earnest until almost the 3rd week of November. But they've been trying to make up for lost time. And then elsewhere in the resort, as some people are already probably tracking, we go from approximately 300 folks year round to about 1,500 during the winter season. So that recruiting, training, onboarding, all happened as usual. And our HR team was excited to note how many returning staff we had this year, which means that there are folks with some familiarity, some expertise in their fields of operations. So those are two things that we thought were very promising for the season ahead and everyone's ability to work together and get the job done. So right now, if you don't mind, Megan, going to the next slide, we are open, which was something that I earnestly hoped would be true on this day when we said to Mike 3 weeks ago that we would come in and talk with you all. So we're open. We opened Saturday. Our snowmaking and grooming crews right now are doing everything they can. They're working overtime to try and leverage the conditions we had. We had a couple of storm cycles. We've had the colder temperatures. And so they're working together to retain the pack that we have, to settle it. You guys are already familiar with these things. So there are a couple of runs and areas that we're focused on right now that we're targeting. One, looking to have Peekaboo open by tomorrow.
What's open right now to start?
Right now, we have the lower part of lift 4. So we have, let's see, Upper Misty Maiden is open. Yeah, and the bypass. Yeah. So it's been limited this weekend. Look to have Peekaboo open tomorrow. The Meadows base area and the Butterfly video section should be open. We're targeting by the 13th. Lower Misty Maiden by a week from now. And we're focused on lifts 5 and 6 ongoing so that the Super Loop can be open, including Sea Forever. So those are specific places. Do you want to add anything to that, Steve, since you were at that ops conversation
Right,
this morning?
Everybody knows the early season conditions really dictate what we can or can't do. And the good news is on Saturday and Sunday, we probably had about roughly 1,300 skiers and boarders on the mountain, which is an incredible amount. I'm sure 98% of those were locals. As we all know, that when the mountain opens up, we open up more or less for the locals early season simply because there's no money to be made at this point. Very few people are actually outside of the season passes are paying for daily tickets. So the other good thing about this weekend are we try to put people in different places where they can have fun and enjoy. If you're up there, you'll notice that we opened a new pocket park for a terrain park and was very well received. And our groomers and snowmakers, at first it was targeted just to go down and then hike back up. But with good effort from snowmaking and groomers, it was actually a complete park where you could go right through it. And it was, people loved it already. And that's part of the mountain utilization is making sure people can have fun where they want to have fun and then not interfere with people having fun in a different aspect of either skiing or boarding. But like Laura said, the effort up the upper part of the mountain is, we had some good snow. The patrol has done a great job of getting things ready with ropes and control work that they do well. And another good storm or two will open up a lot more across the top of the mountain. But opening the mountain without lift one, a real true beginner run is a challenge. And that's why our crew is really doing, they're focused on getting that open by next Saturday, the 13th. And we feel pretty good about that. So that's really where the mountain is right now. A lot of effort going on, as Laura said. We're fully staffed as far as all aspects of the mountain, as far as restaurants and that. Now it's a matter of hopefully getting the right conditions so we can open doors and let people explore more than what we have today. But overall, very successful opening, even though delayed, still very successful. I was out there, and I know a lot of people were out there having a good time over the weekend. So that's good news for the community.
So if you don't mind going to the next slide. So we also wanted to share what we're tracking right now with contract negotiations. There were negotiations on Friday the 5th and Saturday the 6th. And at that event, the resort presented its what's called last, best, and final offer. So this is a standard kind of term and part of the collective bargaining process. So just a few details about the offer. It can be difficult to put it into simplified terms just because there are people with different skills, different credentials that include premiums, different statuses, based on their certifications, and then different seniority. And so with those pieces together, if you're not familiar with collective bargaining, typically wages will be made of multiple layers of conditions that affect different workers differently. And so we're just attempting to communicate the average general increase that folks on ski patrol would see, knowing that each individual's hourly rate is extremely specific to them. So that's one caveat in these numbers. It doesn't mean that if I were on ski patrol, then I would take a number and calculate it by itself to my wage, because I would have to look at my own seniority and certifications and things like that. So these contracts are 3 years, and typically an offer is going to include structured changes over the course of the whole contract. So the offer that's on the table right now in year one is an overall 9% increase to wages, as well as a 3.3% market adjustment. So that's an additional increase for advanced and specialist patrollers. And then, we'll just call it various for the sake of brevity and simplicity, various additional increases that are associated with specific skills, as well as a per year increase in the equipment allowance that the ski patrol has. So right now, under the last contract, it was at $1,200, and it gradually increases that equipment allowance to $1,600. In the second and third years, there would be an additional minimum cost of living adjustment of 5%. So that's a very general statement, as I said, but that's some of the overall terms with the offer that's on the table. And then the Ski Patrol Union is set to vote either today or tomorrow. I'm tracking that it could happen today.
Yeah, the ski patrol folks, they had to reach out to all their group, and the hardest thing, or one of the more difficult things, is securing a room so they can all go together and have the vote proceed as they're supposed to do, as their policy. There was good discussions. We met both Friday and Saturday. there's been a very, a variety of meetings over the course of time, good discussions. I think everybody understands the importance of the patrol as far as safety goes. But in addition to the patrol being a safety aspect of the mountain, everybody has to understand that there's other departments, almost every department that the resort has some level of safety component to it. So not one department is truly the safety department. So there's a variety of different departments that we have that are all equally addressing the safety concern. But the patrol is very important, and they work hard, and they're working hard today to do work on the mountain to get us ready for opening more runs, which is, all part of us operating in a good flavor to have everything open for, especially the holidays as they come. I mean, but the bottom line is that, and the patrol has to make their decision according to what's their guidelines or important factors. But the bottom line is that if in fact the patrol does do a walkout, and they can do that if they want, that the mountain will be open. The expectation of the mountain being open has to be realistic. And with the minimum requirements or the requirements from the Forest Service or the tram board, our projection is that if there is a walkout or a strike, that we could open lift 1 and lift 4. That's it. And as we all know, there's those areas can only handle X amount of skiers or boarders. It becomes a very different experience for people coming over and visiting Telluride, Mountain Village, Telluride, or the region, locals, visitors, second homeowners. It'll be a totally different experience what we're all used to if in fact the patrol is not there to do what they're assigned to do. So we're hoping that we think our offer is a very strong offer. The patrol has had raises over the last contract for the last 3 years of somewhere in the 25% category over the course of 3 years. This puts the patrol somewhere in the 20s again as far as increases. And again, we hope that we can have a successful vote tonight, and the patrol can continue to do their work, and we can have a good holiday season for the community. So other than that, if you have some questions or something, we still have like 3 minutes.
Was that your last slide? No?
That was my last slide. I kept it very simple in case there was.
I have one.
There were
question, since
questions.
we do have about 6 minutes. Do you know how far off your offer is from the request by the ski patrol?
I mean,
So sort of yes and no, Anne, because it's expedient to express things as a general average percentage to communicate it effectively. However, the specific components of change are really personalized, as I was previously describing. Yeah.
I mean, the offer the patrol had on the table on Saturday afternoon, their last counter was somewhere in the area of a general, again, like Laura said, 28% increase for year 1 and 3% COLA or the COLA for year 2 and 3. So you're somewhere north of 30% based on those numbers. You can see our number roughly is 9, 3, 5, and 5, 22%. So there is a gap, and there's gap at different components within the offers. So that's where it gets a little complicated.
Anyone else have a question?
There is a hand up online. Megan's hands up.
Mian. We're just gonna give us a minute to unmute you. There you go.
Hey guys, I just wanted, just because the percentages I think are really confusing to the community, is it possible for you to share sort of on average what that increase is in actual dollars? And if that, Steve, you had said that this keeps everybody kind of in the 20-ish range per hour for each employee. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
I mean, I don't have the exact dollars that, we're talking of, the dollars over 80 patrollers, roughly 75 to 80 patrollers.
Right, but
I-
on average, sorry, because you're using the percentages, so I assume that that percentage correlates to a specific dollar amount.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't bring a dollar amount with me. I just, because as everything kind of changes based on either new patrollers coming in, or we had a one patroller move from the union side into management, and then we had some changes with the previous supervisors, were now in the union as not as supervisors, as station leads. So there's a lot of movement on the numbers. I just don't have it. I'm sorry.
Do you think it's possible to get that information just because this is a public meeting and obviously the public can attend, and I know the public's very interested in getting some accurate information. Is that information that we might be able to get to the public by the end of this meeting?
I'm not sure if we're, I mean, the patrol has the numbers, we have the numbers, they're in the voting stage tonight. I'm not sure that's gonna be available to me, and I'm sorry.
Bean,
That's
are you asking for the total dollar increase that Telsky would be spending? Or are you asking for like for a typical patroller, what their hourly wage would go from and to?
I think that the percentages feels very confusing. And obviously we all know that percentages can skew kind of wildly. And so I just was trying to make sure that, that the community at large was really dealing with, accurate information so that, so that everybody could be informed. But if that information is not available, then that's understandable as well. These aren't our negotiations, they're theirs. So thank you guys for presenting this information.
Thank you. Galena has a question or a comment.
Hi, Galena Gleason, County Commissioner. Thanks for being here today. I had a question kind of similar to what Meehan had, just about hard numbers and thinking about the potential effects to the regional economy if the patrol does indeed strike over the holidays and that limited terrain access, and just the perception throughout the industry at large. As I understood, what the patrol is asking dollar-wise for their full ask was somewhere around the $400,000 mark. And so I was going to ask a similar question, like what the offer that your last best and final offer, what that kind of boiled down to in dollar amount, just to give perspective to the public. But
Our last dollar amount was over 300,000. Is where our last dollar amount, and a good question, because the reality of where the impact on the community is gonna end up is we've already had reservations from different lodging companies start to cancel based on projected work stoppage. We also already had people within our ticket office that normally would start buying their lift tickets over the holidays, have already paused on that, and some have actually canceled on that. As far as the community impact, we all know what most people over the holidays come for, the good times between the county and the different communities, the town of Mountain Village and town of Telluride, but they also come to have access to the mountain. Part of the access to the mountain, if you have lift 1 and 4, a lot of our restaurants up high might not be open. And, a lot of people come for Alpino Vino or come for Bon Vivant. Those were lift 4 and lift 1 we don't get there, and people aren't going to walk up that high. So it's going to be a tremendous impact for both the resort and the communities, and the counties. Everything around here will be affected tremendously, and that's why the negotiations were taken very seriously, and And, everybody kind of had good discussions along the way and went back and forth quite a few times. And the resort thinks our offer is very strong as far as where we are based on other competitive patrols and other competitive pay structures within their patrols. So, it's, we think our offer is strong, and we hope the patrollers look at it closely and they vote the right way, they vote for it this, tonight or tomorrow.
We actually do have time for, we can go till 2, so we have time for a few more questions, 4 more minutes. Zoe?
Just to keep discussing the impacts of this potential strike and really keep focusing on the experience that the visitors are going to have and how it's going to be impacted. So what is the ski resort doing to prepare for that transition away from on-mountain activities to make sure that the guests coming to the ski resort are still meeting some of those expectations? Are you planning anything as a contingency of offerings as a ski resort?
Yeah,
And maybe-
yes, thanks for the question. At this point, the first contingency that we're trying to do is find a way that we can successfully open lift 1 and 4. That's the first contingency package that we have to address. But the second one is, you're right, are we looking at doing other activities within either the core of Mountain Village, the town of Telluride, within our restaurants? We're looking at other options right now, and again, that will turn into a more serious effort after the vote comes in. I mean, we're planning both sides of it right now, but the hope is that our proposal is a strong one and that it will be successful and our communities can run as they normally do over the holidays, because we all know how important that time frame is for everyone, families, locals, second homeowners, visitors, and all the employees that come here. I think the biggest challenge, though, that is out there also is that, as Laura said, we're fully staffed right now. We have 1,500 employees that are ready to work. And a lot of our employees are seasonal employees, in addition to the locals that we have here. And I'll be honest with you, is if our seasonal employees are not working over the holidays, the chances of them staying is slim. And if they leave, and we'll get through this somehow, but if they leave and in the course of us getting through this with negotiations, we might not be able to open the whole resort in February because we don't have enough lift operators. We don't have enough seasonal workers to open things. So that experience will be diminished the whole season if this work stoppage strike goes on for if it goes on at all. That's the other side of it that no one's really looking at, or we are looking at it, figuring out how do we open the mountain February, March, end of January. And if we don't have employees, as you all know, you can't do much.
Mike Bordogna has a question. This will be our last question for
Rick has been waiting.
Sorry, who did?
Sorry.
Who did?
Rick has been,
Oh,
had his hand up for a while.
Rick Gomez.
He took his hand down.
Well,
It's just a quick one. First off, thanks for being here and thanks for this communication. We've appreciated getting the emails from Chuck, and I'm curious, in the last one, it solicited public feedback on the TSG's negotiating position. And I'm curious if you could comment about the feedback that you received.
Yeah, I haven't seen all of it because it went to him. But it was a mix. Absolutely. I guess I want to clarify that it is misleading and deeply unhelpful to consider it ski patrol versus, say, resort ownership. And I understand that that's how in public conversation this has become. And yet every one of us here is affected. So it is truly impossible, like appreciates and understands the key role that ski patrol plays in rescuing people, in preventing accidents that happen, as well as the roles that other employees play, as Steve talked about, and Galena, you talked about the economic impact. I'm thinking about the effect on, honestly, on tax revenues to each of the governments represented here that have statutory obligations to provide social services based on revenues that are delivered not just in a season, but in key weekends, key moments in that season. That's especially true for Mountain Village if you look at the pattern of their revenue. So I say all that because I think it's difficult to, propose that there's for or against one side or another, and I'm not sure that that's helpful. But we've had a lot of feedback that's thinking about, concerned about the community while also really appreciating what the ski patrol does. And does that make sense? It's kind of impossible. And I guess as a human being, I truly refuse to propose that the ski patrol, who are valued coworkers, are on the other side of a thing from the resort owner who also wants us to have an economically sustainable operation. So we find ourselves at an impasse, and yet the desires that the feedback that I have seen is like, can we please together come to a solution that gets people where they need to be wage-wise and makes sure that key operations are occurring so that everyone can do the work that they would like to be doing.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like to hear what's happening in the county and the towns. And there'll be a conversation at the end, I believe, about the plans for the winter otherwise. So look forward to that. You know what? I don't see his hand and I texted him and haven't heard back. So I think he maybe.
Oh, and I couldn't unmute. My apologies.
Okay, let's go. Yes.
Mine's really very quick. And, first, Rick Gomez, Mountain Village Town Council member. First off, really just thanks Steve and Laura for once again coming to the public and being able to answer these tough questions. Pardon me if I've already missed this, but what is the drop dead deadline then for them to respond to TSG? You touched on maybe in the next couple days, but is there an actual hard deadline?
Yes, Rick, thanks for the question. Part of the last offer, the deadline was this Friday at midnight. That was when we expected to have an answer back from patrol. So the patrol leadership group said they thought they were going to try to speed this up and have an answer either tonight or tomorrow. But technically, per the last offer, it was Friday at midnight.
Friday the 5th at midnight. Okay. And my question, I guess,
probably the
the
12th,
last
right?
comment is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Friday the 12th, not the 5th.
This Friday coming up, the 12th at midnight is drop dead. Okay, thank you. And then two-part, similar to vibrancy and vitality, TSG has an in-house, I suppose, events department. Has there been any chats about perhaps TSG leading the forefront of, coming up with an agenda if, God forbid, there is a strike, that then TSG can lead for guest activities, both in the village core and in the town of Telluride?
Yeah, Rick, as I said, we're having discussions right now with with our special events and our restaurants and our different activities that we can try to put on. And again, the hope is that we have a good resolution coming forward and we can plan events in a more positive way. But we are looking at that as we speak.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and now we'll move on. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is 6B, and the county is going to kick off all of our presentations of our high-level goals and budget overview. And is this Mike or Jim?
This is both of us tag team.
Okay, take this.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Mike Bourding is San Miguel County Manager, and with me is Jared Biggs, our Deputy County Manager. This was requested in an IG, oh gosh, it might have been 2 IG meetings ago, to talk a little bit about what the county's opportunities and constraints are, given that we've all just gone through our budget. We wanted to come and share this with you, and my counterparts in Telluride and Mountain Village have graciously agreed to do the same. So thanks, Zoe and Paul, and or Michelle.
Also good to hear from Norwood.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we are. Thank you. I'm sorry. I was just talking to Mayor Meehan on my way here, but so first off, we had a 2-day, 3-day retreat, 2-part retreat this year. The commissioner set biannual goals. So knowing that we are a statutory county and that so much of our activities are directed by state law, versus our town counterparts, which are home rule municipalities for the most part. Obviously, Norwood is also a statutory town, but we're required to provide certain services, and those services are the bulk of our budget. Our mission statement this year did not change. It is still to ensure that our residents are healthy and flourishing and that our communities are safe and vibrant by providing those essential community services. Responsible stewardship of our environment. And for that one, we got into a little bit further in climate action, that we want to continue to be a leader or at the forefront of climate action, prioritizing long-term fiscal stability. And we've been very fortunate in the past several years, especially with the continued valuation increases. When I started in 2019, I thought we were going to go into a recession. Luckily, it was just a couple of years of COVID. But we've been trying to be very prudent with our finances, waiting and building up our fund balances, because we know that we're going to have to still deliver those same services, which we'll get to in a couple slides, regardless of decreases in our valuation. And just as a quick reminder, does anybody remember the last time that San Miguel County's valuation was over $1 billion? We're currently approximately $1.2 billion. 1.5, yeah, sorry, yeah. The last time was in 2009. And in the next valuation cycle, we went to close to 600 million. Our valuation decreased by almost half. So that was kind of our eye opener to the fact that our general fund supports the majority of all of our elected offices, as well as the majority of our statutorily required items. So we've been trying to build that up to a level that could sustain us for 1 full year. And we're close. We're not quite there, but we're getting very close to that. Likewise, we're embarking on a 10-year capital plan just in our preliminary housing projects, which we'll also touch on. That would far exceed what our existing fund balances are. So we're going to be looking to not just pay for those out of hand, but we've been very successful with grants. And so we'll look to leverage those funds. And then obviously the last one is partnering with our other partners, whether that's towns, nonprofits, to increase the quality of life in San Miguel County and the region, understanding that we function as a region, not just as an isolated county. The majority of we have a significant amount of workforce and, tourism and other travel impacts that rely on our regional partners. Our focus areas, we defined a little bit better this year. I think in the past, we just said it was mental health, housing, and environment. And we defined those a little bit more through our process this year, that we will actively support and improve the well-being of all residents, including our vulnerable and underrepresented populations, with a focus on increasing access to healthcare, behavioral health services, childcare, and food security. The county seeks to fill in the gaps in essential services and assist local and regional stakeholders to build a stronger, healthier San Miguel County. You may be seeing and hearing about some of these things as Commissioner Brown has been leading the charge to bring back our crisis or CIT, Community Intervention Program, similar to what may have been our co-responder program in the past, as well as to look at the commissioners brought to the voters, and thank you for, if you authorize that, to allow us to have the full capture of funds for early childhood education and behavioral health support services. Side note, Road and Bridge was also allowed to sustain at its existing 1.9 mils rather than be reduced by the state legislation, which we'll hit on at the very end. When it comes to infrastructure, we talked about being dedicated to maintaining and building the county's critical infrastructure, including the safety of roads and bridges. I know our commissioners heard a ton about roads over the last 2 years, and we started a pilot project this year, which was shown to be successful, of adding in an additional $350,000 in outside road maintenance contracts to help us get back to a standard of maintenance that we had been at several years ago. And up until 2-3 weeks ago, we had never been at full staff in the last 7 years for Road and Bridge until now. So we're excited to see what we can do with a full staff as well as these additional funds continuing. We talked about protecting and securing water sources and related systems, supporting crucial infrastructure for community housing, and that the county will support these efforts through planning, permitting, and using county property when appropriate. A lot of folks know that the county has acquired county property over the years, whether it be for gravel pits or donations as PUDs have come in. It shouldn't be a secret. We worked with the Telluride Foundation to create Pinion Park in Norwood, the town of Telluride to create Sunnyside. And we're also looking to develop other parcels like the Pathfinder Gravel Pit, the Deep Creek Shop in concert with CDOT to bring back CDOT employees to be based out of there for faster response. And then at our sheriff's office to house our on-call dispatchers when they're working their shifts. As a side note, we have no employees in our dispatch center that live in the east end of the county. Everybody is commuting. The closest is Norwood. The furthest is from Dove Creek. So we're talking about folks with 5-hour-long commutes, which is why we're talking about this on-call housing. Climate action. We will continue to lead in climate action and resilience by implementing our local and regional efforts to protect and strengthen our community. We'll prioritize initiatives to protect our natural resources, reduce our carbon footprint, and improve our ability to withstand future climate challenges. The county went through an EPC project. We're getting over 75% of all of the county's power usage for county facilities from our own solar. We have 2 microgrids. We're now up to 4 EVs. We have 4 EV charging stations going in, but we know that that's great that we can do this. We're looking at our land use code and how we can work with building codes to not make them exorbitantly more expensive, but also continue to move that dial on reducing our carbon impacts as a community. Okay, let's skip over the actions. You can read that on our website. You can look at it on our beautiful posters. County operations, the Board of Commissioners are our governing body. They hire by contract myself and our county attorney, Maura Fahey in the back, who's just celebrated a year with us and is amazing. Look at our elected offices. Out of all those, our sheriff's office is the largest, representing over 43% of our general fund expenditures. But those are the required offices required to be offered by state statute. Then you'll see a majority of these other, whether it's IT, comms, building finance, GIS, et cetera. Some of those are required, such as public health, human services. Some of those are required by the voter-approved funding, such as Road and Bridge, Parks and Open Space. Now I'll stop there. As we get into this beautiful wheel that Jared has drawn up, the inner circle are those that are required of us by law. So you get an idea. For district attorney, for instance, our district attorney bill went up 36% this year. Yeah, so, almost $400,000 being paid for our district attorney services. And that's not really a negotiation. We can't say no to that and still get the service. I know one of our surrounding counties said no, and they were told that their county attorney will be given all of their district attorney's caseload moving forward. So it's a tough position. Yeah, you would have been great. And then if you look at the outer wheel, those are not required by law, but they're pretty darn important, such as planning, law enforcement, early childhood, and the like, building department, juvenile services, veteran services. By the way, we had a greater increase than any other county in the state of Colorado as far as amounts received by our veterans due to the work of our veteran service officer. And I know we're cutting.
Mike, were you gonna comment on which of those services we provide countywide? Because I think that's important for our partners to understand that a lot of these services are not just for unincorporated county. They are for all 8,000 residents, like public health, human services.
Yeah, I think building, it's easier to say the ones that are not countywide.
Yeah.
Building, planning, parks and open space, and law enforcement, though we have some crossover, but those are really the only ones that are not provided within our individual jurisdictions because they provide for those services on their own. Yes, Commissioner Leeson.
Can you also speak to how much of the property tax collection the county actually retains after after those funds are allocated to special districts? Because I think that's something that I've a lot of questions about. And
we're in the
it's not really
unfortunate
understood.
position of collecting for all special districts and taxing districts. So we get a lot of frustration from voters or for residents and taxpayers about the overall increase. And when we try and show them, here's what our portion is, and here's how it has increased, or in fact, next year it's decreasing for them overall as a mill levy. But it's less than 22% on average. And that's different by each area and their respective mills. But as a general average, we're talking 20 to 22. I'm going to turn it over to Jared now.
I'm just going to run over this really quick. So just to give a snapshot of what the county's budget looks like, this is our current budget proposal. We are adopting on Wednesday. This is a really busy week for us. But just to give you a sense, we have $35 million of revenue, $36 million of expenditures planned for the year. And when you think of that revenue and expenditures, these graphs to the right show that 49% of the revenue we receive is restricted, right? And so that is specific for road and bridge, capital, retirement, early childhood, mental health, that's specific use, right? Whereas our general fund, which is our most useful, flexible bucket of funding, so to speak, does not make up as much flexibility. And similarly, when we look at the expenses on that side, 26% of our general fund goes to those elected offices, right? And so we really, when the commissioners are really discussing their priorities and what they're going to, put most of their flexible funding for, we're talking about 22% of our general fund revenue. We can have a little bit of flexibility in our restricted funds if it fits one of those special programs, but these are just things that we're thinking about, looking through the lens of our goals as we continue to focus on how we spend our most flexible resources versus those that are a little less. So, and this last one is just kind of saying that same thing. As you all know, as our partners, as our colleagues, if we could have inflation of all kinds be less than 5.25%, that would be a really valuable thing for us.
I think you need to just mention for the towns what that 5.25%
Yeah,
means.
from Senate Bill 24-233 that passed last year, it limits the amount of additional property tax revenue, which property tax is our main source of revenue, to a maximum of 5.25% more than last year. Our insurance, our pay increase, or our program costs exceeded that significantly. And we foresee, we've been looking at a year-over-year average of approximately 7 to 8% in increased costs. So when our revenue can only go up by that percentage, and we're looking at flat or decreasing sales taxes, we get nervous about how long that general fund and or other fund reserves can sustain us, which is part of the reason we've been a little bit miserly.
Miserly. That's
Yeah.
good. So again, we see a trajectory where our revenues are not going to keep pace. And so we will just be keeping an eye on that. And we'll be looking through the lens of our goals to try and assess what new things we might fund, right? And so that's really it. We are happy to answer questions, but happy to roll on too. So.
Yeah, we are, that was our time. Is there any burning question for the county? I think the point that we wanted to make, from our point of view is how much of our budget is statutorily obligated and how little flexibility we have. And also that most of the services we provide are not just in unincorporated county, they are countywide. So we're in a little bit of a different spot and we felt like it would be helpful to educate the towns on that. So
For instance, with the road and bridge measure, that solidified our 1.9 mils, that permanently means that over 750,000 goes to the towns for their road maintenance. So the towns of Telluride and Mountain Village are the largest two recipients of those funds, but then the other towns, based off of their lane miles, get a portion of our road and bridge mill levy. A third of what we collect goes back out.
okay, any burning questions or does that make sense? Something that I've been learning over the last couple of years. All right, I think next up we have Zoe with a similar presentation for the town of Telluride.
This microphone thing is very interesting.
Yes, maybe Maria could help you.
I could, I'll just hold it like I'm singing a song. And I have Kaylee, our finance director, is going to help us present. And thank you for this assignment, Mike. Hopefully we did it correctly. So I'm going to let Kaylee present. Really what we're going to show is our 2026 budget, which has already been adopted, our projections of revenue and expenses, and then we'll go over the town's goals and objectives and really how we frame those and focus on those. So I'll let Kaylee present. Before we do, I don't think we touch on this too much, but I don't want it to get lost. So we also, if it makes you feel better, get lots of comments about property tax at the town of Telluride, and we only collect just about 7% of the total that people are paying. And our general fund mill, which is like 3.6 about, has had a cap. So since the 70s, we cannot collect more than 7% over the last year's amount. So 7% is more than 5.6525. But we definitely understand that balance as well. All right, Kaylee, I'll toss it over to you, and I know you'll toss back to me.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. We did this a little differently than the county and go into a little more detail on our general fund and then our sales tax projections and some of our larger revenue source projections for our 2026 budget. For our general fund, which is the town's primary operating fund and pays for the town's core administrative and operational tasks, we have total budgeted revenues for 2026 of $18.4 million, and taxes make up 65% of this revenue. Our sales and use tax is $11.2 million, and then our property tax, as Zoe said, for our general mill levy, which goes into our general fund, we will receive about $1 million, and that is capped at a 7% increase annually. Our total expenses for the general fund are $18.2 million, and we have continued focus on hiring and retaining quality staff, and our labor costs make up 58% of our general fund budgeted expenses. Our reserve fund balance for our general fund is $12.2 million, or 67% of total expenses. And the town council's adopted goal for this fund is to have a reserve of 35%.
Before you move on for the general fund, I also just want to make note as it impacts the region, our case grant comes out of our general fund, which is interesting and difficult at times, and it increases every year, which Elena can attest to, and that covers, obviously we have special events, but also our community grants. So that's a huge thing that we do out of our general fund as well.
I'm going to skip over these large revenue sources because I'll go into those in more detail later on here, but We will have a 5% rate increase on our water and wastewater utility rates, and this is to keep up with repairing and replacing our aging infrastructure for those two utilities. So for 2026, we have total budgeted revenues of $59 million, and that excludes transfers between funds. This is just a breakdown of all of our funds and the revenues, excluding our transfers. Our general fund, $18 million, is the largest part of our total revenues. And then our capital fund is a large part, and as well as our water and wastewater utilities. So as I said before, our sales tax revenue is a very large part of our general fund funding, and it is 4.5%. 4% of that goes into our general fund. And we are projecting a 4% increase from 2024 to our 2025 forecasted, and then 1% down from our 2025 forecast to our 2026 budget. And that's a 3% increase from our 2024 audited numbers. For the 2.5% short-term rental excise tax and 2% town lodgers tax revenue, for both of these, we are projecting the same increases from 2024 to 2025 forecasted a 10% increase. From 2025 forecasted to our 2026 budget, we're expecting to be down 5%. So that's a total of a 5% increase from our 2024 audited to our 2026 budgeted numbers. And our 2.5% short-term rental tax goes to help fund our affordable housing fund. And then the town lodgers tax goes into our town lodgers tax fund. Our business license revenues are also a large part of our general fund and affordable housing fund revenues, and we are budgeting those to be flat compared to 2025 projected. We didn't see much of an increase for 2025 compared to our 2024 audited numbers, and don't expect to see a lot more business licenses coming in for next year. Our building license revenue mainly goes into our general fund as well, other than that housing mitigation fund, which helps fund our affordable housing programs. For 2026, we are budgeting these revenue sources to be 15% down compared to our 2025 forecast. And our 2025 forecast was based on year-to-date numbers when we were doing our budget, and we've already surpassed those by quite a bit in some of these revenue sources. Our total expenses for all of our funds is $82 million, and this is higher than our total revenues, partly because our capital fund balances have been building up over the past few years, and we are now underway and completing a lot of these projects. And then our open space and affordable housing funds, we budget the total fund balance to a set-aside account. So for open space, that's 4.6 million. In affordable housing, 12 million, which we don't actually plan to spend that much in 2026. I don't know if you want to add anything, Zoe, to that.
No, I think this number gets taken at the top number, but there's a lot that goes into it. So expenses are budgeted when you're going to be using them, and our set asides are also part of that, which complicates things. So I appreciate you clarifying that for the listening audience and everybody here on how we do that.
And our capital project focus continues to be on improving aging infrastructure and planning and building affordable housing. And just a breakdown of all of those $82 million worth of expenses for each of our funds. And I'll turn it over to Zoe now to go over capital projects and the goals and objectives.
Yeah. How are we doing on time, man? I don't want to go.
You should have another 5. How's that?
Okay, great. So I won't go through all of our capital projects, but some of the main ones, looking at our town park master plan, starting look at our oval construction, which is part of that, the Warner Field safety netting, and other general parks projects, including the swimming pool resurfacing. Other capital projects include our fleet replacement, Casta bus replacement, public works facility improvement. This has been something that we have been waiting for the release of these grant funds, and we're finally getting there. That's $2 million in grant funds for a $2.4 million project. A big one I want to highlight for everyone is we are starting implementation of our wayfinding, placemaking, and signage program. This will be over the course of 5 years, but replacing wayfinding signage from town park to all of our parking signage to businesses to our valley floor open space to have a really cohesive wayfinding signage program. But it means it will be different than what we have now and something to pay attention to. We continuing work on our facilities master plan. This has literally been something that's been in the works for 30 years, and it includes all of our facilities in town that need to have a strategy for us to continue to grow and serve our community and our employees. So we're continuing that work, which in some ways is partnering with the county on that as well. Next slide, Kaylee. For our street, alley, and bridge capital projects, we're wrapping up our Colorado Avenue accessibility project. Another one that I think should be a note to the county is we're going to be doing a bike path repair and overlay. So this is something we've been working on. I know. Something we've been working on for some while to patch in order to have a overlay, and we've finally gotten there. Then we are also looking at some stormwater management updates and street O&M, surface preservation and concrete repair, alley improvements. And another one that I know I've had talks with the county on is the East Colorado Traffic Calming Project. We've had a lot of temporary traffic calming measures, but we're looking to make those a little bit more permanent in the East, on East Colorado. And then, of course, we keep having housing capital projects as the main priority. Looking at our Virginia Placer 2A construction, Canyonlands Tower House, and Lot L and Canyonlands continue planning and design. Next slide, Kaylee. I won't go through our water and wastewater projects. You guys can look at those. I feel like they're the necessary items for our different facilities, including Mill Creek, Pandora, Stillwell, as well as our treatment plant, our current one, and our new facility that we are continuing to look toward. Next slide, Kaylee. We touched on the Telluride Housing Authority, so THA. This is our rental portfolio. So Shandoka, Virginia Placer, Sunnyside, and Voodoo. Just wanted to kind of make note of the revenues. So through our rent calculator, our rent model, we take AMI as well as an affordability multiplier. AMI increased 9%, so we are going to see that increase in that multiplier. And then we did, through direction of council and seen in our adopted budget, we reduced the multiplier from 27%, from 30% to 27% to all properties other than Shandoka old buildings, which moved down to 25%. And that the expenditures there are, we have some capital projects, but really looking at that piece. And Scott, I saw you raised your hand. I can pause for questions if you want to have a question on this one.
Oh, thanks. I can ask at the end because it's not about this slide.
Oh, okay, perfect. Great.
How many more slides do you have,
I think
Zoe?
I have like one or two.
Perfect, you go.
Yeah.
Yep. So I really want to focus on this. Town of Telluride Town Council really hones in on their goals and objectives for the year. We look at our focus areas, which are high level strategic priorities, then goals, which are outcome based objectives, and most importantly, our action items. So if you want to know what the town of Telluride is doing in a year, you can look at our goals and objectives. So please go to bit.ly, .ly, goals, and you will see everything that we have outlaid for 2026, which is 83 action items over all of those areas we mentioned. 50 of these are a continuation of things we have been working on. 26 are new and 7 are carryover. We also have a very clear dashboard of tracking these goals so you can understand where we are in meeting those marks and how the town is accomplishing those. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can go to the next slide. Kaylee, I think it's the last one, if I'm right. So addressing critical infrastructure needs, preserving our community, protecting health and quality of life, cultivating economic sustainability and a thriving core, and being an employer of choice. Those are our main focus areas. And some of those highlights are, of course, housing remains top priority, advancing Canyonlands and Tower House, Virginia Plaster 2A, Lot L, and Carhenge, mobility and infrastructure, enhancing our parking, our roads, our sidewalk, our bike paths, environment resilient and resilience. So executing our climate action plan and expanding EV infrastructure, health and safety, strengthening emergency preparedness and wildfire coordination, which I know is a huge thing that the county is leading that we're partaking on, and continuing for our community to hone in on transparency and communication. So expanding bilingual outreach, digital records, and public accessibility and outreach. And I believe that's the last slide, right, Kaylee? Perfect. So now if anyone has any questions.
I just had a quick one on the early in the presentation, there was a wheel that went through the various funds, and there was one that I didn't recognize, which was, I think it was called a medical fund or a health insurance fund. And I
Yeah,
was just wondering what that is.
that
I don't
was,
know
I
that
think,
we have something like that.
that was actually, I think, a suggested requirement from our auditors. Kaylee, are you still on to answer that?
Yes, it was a requirement from our auditors during our 2023 audit when we changed auditors. It used to just be accrued in our general fund, and they asked us to create a separate fund.
And it's just for town health insurance costs.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any
But
other-
yeah, I was just gonna. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll do my wrapping up statement. But the town has a lot of different budgets and a lot of different funds. So hopefully we broke it down well enough. And obviously it's to serve our constituency, which is the town of Telluride. But a lot of that also goes to those living outside the boundaries of Telluride and the services that we have here that they benefit in. I don't know if any of our council has anything to add to that, but.
All right, thank you so much. We will move on now to Mountain Village. And we are a little bit behind, but you've got 15 minutes from now, so take it to about, what would that be? 10 of, 5 of?
I will hustle if that works.
5 of.
All right. Well, much like, oh, hold on. Let me just... All right. Much like the town of Telluride and the county, we also have our goals and objectives, which I will go through as well here in a second, but did want to just note that Mountain Village's approach to our budget is a year-long process. We have a finance committee made up of several of our council members who have substantial backgrounds in finance, and we benefit greatly from that. And so they meet with namely Elizabeth Lemley, our finance director, who unfortunately is not able to be here today, and myself. And we work on both the budget and the audit throughout the year. And a lot of our budget is the result of those discussions. Our council generally is relatively conservative when it comes to the budget and does take a conservative approach to spending and collections as we look towards the future. We do tie our budget decisions to our strategic objectives, which are the creation actually of staff. And then every new council, we have council go through them and make sure that there is alignment with the new council in terms of those strategic objectives. But we do feel like our directors have the closest grasp on where we are as an organization and as a community. That said, we do tie our council goals to those strategic objectives. And for this year, we have many goals as the town does, but our top goals are listed right there. And I think at the top of that list is pursuing a regional wastewater treatment plant. Michelle Bolson has been leading the charge on that, along with the town of Telluride, and working very hard to determine whether or not that treatment plant is going to be feasible to build, both from a technical point of view as well as a financial point of view. She's also been working very hard to make sure that we are able to legally secure that land, which we have done with the county's cooperation over the last year. And thank you to the Alexander family for making that a reality, not only for the town of Mountain Village, but for the region as a whole. Of course, the gondola is something that council sees as a huge priority for Mountain Village and the region, and is placing a significant emphasis on that. Ilium housing is another huge priority for us. We've been working on that since we acquired that land, again from the Alexander family several years ago. And as we've said over and over again, the Ilium housing effort is one that we don't see as being serving Mountain Village or solely serving Mountain Village. We truly see it as a regional asset, and we are looking forward in 2026 to discussing with our regional partners how they can be involved in that project. We do focus a lot on our forest health. We're really fortunate to have Rodney Walters as our forester. He does incredible work. Although the work he does is largely within the boundaries of Town Mountain Village, it does benefit the region as a whole, because obviously fire doesn't know property boundaries, let alone municipal boundaries. And so, you know, as with the county and as with the town of Telluride's efforts, it truly is something that benefits all of us. Finally, we are spending a lot of time this year thinking about parking as we continue to grow as a region and see more visitors here, both throughout the country, but more importantly, regionally. Our parking needs are only going to increase. And we obviously have the ability with our current parking garage to expand that. And it's been something that has been on our agenda for quite some time. The question is whether or not that's the appropriate place for all that parking to go. And we are looking forward to having, again, a conversation with our regional partners this year about how we collectively think about parking, because parking spots are wildly expensive. I don't know that people fully appreciate the true expense that goes into each and every parking spot. And so I think that we collectively need to be strategic about how those dollars are spent. Finally, it has been an objective of our council for several councils now to assure that regional collaboration is a priority. And I truly commend the mayor and mayor pro tem for their significant efforts since they've been in those positions, for making that a true priority for all of us. With respect to our general fund, about 77% of our general fund comes from two sources. That's sales and property taxes. And we can go through here quickly how those dollars are spent. About $24 million are in our general fund, and those are directly offset by about $24 million in expenditures, so that we end up with our balanced budget. Excuse me. We have been watching our sales tax trends over the last several years. We obviously had, as most mountain communities did, a record year in 2022. But we are seeing a leveling off of that increase. And in fact, we are seeing and expecting a slight decline over the next year. We're projecting a 4% decline in sales tax. And that's mostly, I think, coming from the lodging sector, where we expect to see a dip this coming year. At least that's what we're projecting. We also are seeing about a $400,000 drop in revenue as a result of that projected decrease. Property tax revenue has obviously been going up, as with everybody. The rising real estate values, again, follow the COVID pandemic, and property taxes last year paid through 2024 increased roughly 39% over 2023. The current valuations would have the increased property taxes in 2026 increased to about 27% over our previous assessment. Given those significant increases that have occurred and will occur this year, council has made the decision, at least on first reading, to prevent the increase in our mill levy from not increasing more than 10%. So they've essentially put a cap on the mill levy increase so that our taxpayers within Mountain Village do not see as large of an increase in their property tax bill as they would otherwise see. And you know, that is being done in recognition of the fact, again, of the increase over the last couple of years, but that we are also having to take a look at what our expenditures look like, because if we're going to voluntarily decrease some of our revenues in light of, as Jared noted, increasing inflation factors and just general rising expenses, you know, we do have to balance those two things out. But assuming that council passes their budget on Thursday, we are going to make that trade-off of foregoing some revenue in order to provide our residents property tax relief. To be clear, however, as Zoe noted, many of our taxpayers are, or all of our taxpayers are paying property taxes to a variety of other entities, namely special districts. And so that property tax relief will not flow through their entire property tax bill, only through the town property tax. With our projected drop in sales tax and the temporary mill levy credit on our property taxes, along with the increased rise in costs, we are having to make some general fund budget cuts. And so after our initial budget discussion this fall, council did direct staff to make a $2.5 million cut in the budget as originally proposed in order to offset those drops in revenues as well as expenses. You know, staff is looking for ways to redesign programs and has, you know, asked our own staff to make some cuts on our own. That includes in our own personal life. We did ask staff to begin for the first time in Mountain Village sharing in the premium increase that we'll see this year. Our premiums are increasing about 20%. And so the first time in Mountain Village history, our town employees will share in some of that cost. We did have honest conversations with our town employees, and I think that everyone understands that you know, given the dynamic that we are in at the moment, that it was a prudent thing to do from an organizational perspective. From a capital expenditure standpoint, we do have an awful lot of capital expenditures to pursue this year. We're anticipating that we will invest about $15.5 million in capital across all our funds, and an additional $39 million over the next 4 years, for a total of about $55 million between 2025 and 2030. However, that number does not include two significant capital investments that we're working on at the moment. That includes the wastewater treatment plant, as well as our Ilium housing development. We anticipate that both of those projects at some point will require the town to make significant investments from a capital standpoint. Other funds that we haven't touched on beyond the general fund include the Affordable Housing Development Fund, which again, we are spending money already on Ilium. We will spend about $600,000 this year on that particular project without having anything physical to show for it. Village Court Apartments is a separate fund that we continue to invest in significantly. We view that as one of the town's most important assets, and we find it important to continue to invest in it to assure that it remains a high quality housing option for all of our regional partners. We did increase rent there 5% for 2026 to help fund those efforts. We are, of course, continuing to fund Munchkins, and we subsidize that program by about $450,000 every single year, and we'll do so next year. We do have an increase in our water sewer fund of about 4.75% in terms of our base rate. And I will take this moment to note that we, as an organization and council specifically, have been considering an increase in snowmaking rates. To be clear, the water that is used for snowmaking is jointly owned by the town and the ski company, but the actual infrastructure that is used for snowmaking is owned by the town. And so just as with residents, the town charges both residents and the ski company for the use of that infrastructure, as well as the wear and tear We haven't, and shame on us for not doing this, admittedly, increased rates since 1998. And so we have undertaken a rate study to determine what we should be charging the ski company for those snowbanking rates. The ski company obviously has their own view on what that charge should be. And I will say gratefully that I appreciate Marty Whitmore, TSG's legal counsel, for working very productively with our staff so that we can find a resolution that both works for the town as an organization, the ski company, and the community as a whole. Finally, we are investing in the Telluride Conference Center. The town has already put a new HVAC system in, which hopefully will be a benefit for those who will be attending Film Fest this year. And we're also looking on how to do some significant improvements as we anticipate other improvements within the town occurring here quite soon. So that is my quick overview of where we are as Mountain Village with respect to our budget. Are there any questions? Because I do have one more item to address.
I have one question.
Yeah.
The town of Telluride mentioned that their total budget is, what did you say, Zoe?
Oh, the 83
80,
for the expenditures?
yeah, 83.
Yeah, like
Ours is about
3, but that again includes things that aren't really, as our set asides, and then capital projects have finally come to fruition. So that's why that
Right.
number is so big.
Okay,
So
I
be
understand.
Careful with that number.
I
I'll have
understand.
anything.
Yeah, I mean, they're, and ours, I think, is 37. You mentioned your general fund at 24. What's your overall budget generally, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think the simple answer is you take our general fund and our capital budgets and a couple of our other miscellaneous budget, we're around 50 million.
Thank you.
And our general fund was what, about 18, I think it was? What was it? I can't remember.
Okay. Anyone else? Teddy?
Thanks so much, Paul. Just a quick question, and probably more for the listeners. But do you know if the water and the increased price has affected what Telski is pulling water-wise from you and affecting their snowmaking currently? Or is that kind of not, the rubber hasn't hit the road yet?
No, thank you, Mayor Erico. I appreciate the question. Those new rates have not been put in place. We do have proposed rates, but again, we are working with the ski company to find a number that works for everybody. And so their snowmaking efforts have not been affected in any way this year by those proposed rates.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions for Mountain Village? Zoe?
I don't want to add to yours, but you did remind me something that I think is important, Paul. Out of our general fund, we took over a Lane's Place, and so we subsidize that $150,000 every year out of our general fund, even though that's a much smaller operation than Munchkins, but that is the reality of early childcare in our region.
Thank you for that. All right.
One
Yeah,
more
Paul.
thing, just to answer a question that was asked previously, I've been authorized to communicate that from Ski Patrol that the percentage number that was being asked for translated into dollars translates. Ski Patrol's ask is essentially $3.90 an hour. And so when you take that in the perspective, I think that number should be taken in to perspective with a company making between 18 and $20 million in profit each year.
Thanks for that additional information. And really, this is so helpful to me. Feel like I am starting to get my hands around everything that's happening in the region. Norwood, Sarah, or Candy, are you here? Can you see if Sarah Owens is on, or? Thank you, Jared. Okay, I had a message from John Wontrowski from Ophir offering to make a quick presentation about Ophir's financials and goals and so forth. John, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thanks for including me. I never got back to Mike. Our finance person is part-time, and I felt like her just getting the 2026 budget together was enough. I didn't want to put this on her as well. Real quick on Ophir, our annual budget is about $500,000 per year. We have about $1.4 million on hand. The only debt we have is still paying off the water plant from 2011. And we retired debt on a loan that we used to build our broadband system in 2017. Our income comes primarily from property taxes. We don't have any commercial activity or sale. Well, we do have a sales tax. We don't have any commercial activity up here in Ophir. So we have a mill rate of 27.665. That will undergo, based on new valuations, a 45% increase this year. As a home rule community, we are not subject to that 5.2.5% limit. We also have a 4% real estate transfer tax, and that generally does help us out a lot every year. On the expense side, we are mostly going to be the same for 2026. This year, we have hired a half-time employee to help us work on many of the water projects that we have under deferred maintenance. And that employee has been doing a great job, but also spending money. As we fix things, as we find things, we have to fix it, we have to pay for it. So that's been a big expense this year for us. We bought a $140,000 backhoe to replace a very old backhoe that we had been using. And then this year we'll be offering our employees a COLA raise, a first in 4 years. In terms of goals for us in 2026, it is going to be all about water. We are still learning what we don't know about what needs to be done. We have a lot of planning going on for those projects, and then we have to figure out funding and managing those particular projects. I got to put in a plug for, I've been talking about water infrastructure. I got to put in a plug for our mayor who single-handedly put it together. He had a lot of help, but replaced a pressure reduction and sedimentation box that we have on our water system just before winter. It was a real push to get it in before the snow flew. There were a lot of problems that came up, a lot of problem solving. And I just felt like he really took it upon himself and did it in a very DIY Ophir way. And then thank you to Mike for this exercise. This has been great. I've been learning a lot, and I'm glad to share what's been going on up in Ophir. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Water, water, water. Okay, thank you. Did anyone come on from Norwood? Sarah or Candy? Okay, well, now we're back on schedule, so that's a good thing, although we'll miss those friends. Mike, this item 6F is for you. Request for future discussion with our towns regarding how we collectively consider mitigating the temporary and long-term impacts of large construction projects.
Thank you. And I might tap in one of my commissioners as well, because it's occurred to us recently that when we are looking at large projects within our respective jurisdictions, we obviously consider what local impacts we have to traffic or water, utility, all kinds of other uses. But I don't think until we foresaw, we have potentially a very large project in the county that we'll be discussing on Wednesday. We know that Mountain Village has already started with theirs. We know that they're more likely in the future. And I think our question is how can we do a better job coordinating with each other to identify the timing of these impacts so that we can both communicate better with our residents about what expectations they should have, as well as should we be all trying to coordinate large projects and timing of them better if possible. I know sometimes it isn't possible because of financing or approvals or entitlements, but I think we wanted to just start this question because I know we've heard, I know folks in the town of Telluride have heard a lot of pushback from the amount of change and impact and what those levels are. And I think it's time that we have a more open conversation. And obviously, we're not going to discuss, critical details of proposed projects, necessarily in these forums, but I do think it would behoove us to have more coordination wherever possible so that we can try and brainstorm additional mitigation measures, whether that's workforce housing impacts, traffic impacts, or the fear that we're going to run out of our finite water or other critical utilities.
Galina, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And yeah, what I wanted to put on the table today for the different jurisdictions to consider is just how these potentially large projects kind of flow over into our neighboring communities, and perhaps looking at our own land use codes and application permits and the conditions and standards that are laid out through these permit processes, and considering making amendments to ask those questions of an applicant up front. Like, for instance, what is your workforce housing plan for the development phase of this project? And how will that impact the regional community if that's not going to be contained within your jurisdiction? What's the plan? And potentially, could we bring some of those regional players to the table before this project is permitted to think about how this is going to impact the region?
And I think Mike said this, but I don't think your intention is to have this conversation today, but rather to try to consider what the best forum for those kinds of conversations.
Policymakers for our respective jurisdictions here, and really it's a question to them of, do you have an interest in engaging in this conversation? Because I know at the county level, at least internally, we do. And we'd love to, if there is a willingness, then figure out what is the best structure for that. Is it mayors and managers? Is it building and planning folks getting together on some sort of regularity?
Zoe, is your hand up?
I'm honestly, the lights are starting to get to me, so that's why I'm going like this. But she wore a hat. That's the right move. No, I think I'm understanding when the conversation, when you first brought this up, I thought it was more of a transparency and understanding the construction impacts we have for our region. That's, I think, one layer of this conversation. Then you have long range planning and how we are coordinating collectively in our long range planning efforts. So that kind of is a whole nother piece of this. For the first one, I just kind of wanted to mention the town of Telluride, and I'm sure the town of Mountain Village, if I know them well enough. We have a GIS map, and we're working to really enhance that to layer not only our public construction and potential, but also some of our private, to really understand those impacts. We can continue to add layers for the region of Mountain Village and those timings and the county. I mean, that's the beauty of GIS mapping. So that's one way to strategically look at some of these pieces. Long range planning efforts and policies and looking at our land use code, that is a whole different facilitated discussion that I look forward to participating in, but a different beast altogether.
Great. I love that concept of the GIS mapping and taking into consideration the cumulative impacts of all of these projects, because, we're all look within our jurisdictions and we might know some projects going on in our neighboring jurisdictions, but to actually see that mapped out would be incredible.
Any response from Mountain Village? Any thoughts? I don't see any hands up. Oh, Paul.
Yeah, I guess I can generally say that to the extent that there is a desire for a discussion about how we can change our municipal code to better address these issues, I think that we're always willing to do that and can do it pretty quickly. I do want to having everyone's back in their mind that there are definitely some questions that we can ask of developers, certain requirements that we can make, but there are certain land use decisions that are subject to a quasi judicial process. And so we just have to be mindful of how that all is going to work together.
Sure. Definitely. So Mike, are you suggesting maybe the managers get together and brainstorm this and then bring it back to our councils and commission as a proposal?
I wonder if we have the managers from all the jurisdictions that participate in this meet between now and the next IG and kind of come forward with a proposal for how that discussion could occur. And then I also think the question of how we mitigate impacts is it's not just the timing and the awareness, that's maybe the first step, but it is how do we make sure, because our codes are looking at only within our specific jurisdiction, and there is bleeding impacts into each other's. And I want to make sure that we're not we're not approving projects or promoting projects. And if so, what is our timeline of doing that to make sure that we're not destroying the quality of life that everybody else has?
Thank you. I like your suggestion. Are the towns okay with that? The managers get together and bring forward a proposal for our next IG meeting? And if there's time, run it through the councils and commissions so that we can
Yeah, I
provide
think
feedback.
it would behoove us all to share. Can you keep me in that loop? I'd love to.
All right, we're gonna keep David Averill smart in the loop. Thank you. All right, appreciate that. Everybody's open to that. Even greater regional coordination, which, as we noted, is a goal for a number of us. Paul, similarly, along that theme of coordination, you wanted to speak to our approach to future intergovernmental meetings.
Maybe before we move on, John Pandolfo did have his hand raised.
I'm sorry. Hello, John Pandolfo. Please, we will unmute you or allow you to unmute yourself.
Hi, I was actually raising my hand on behalf of Cheryl Miller, who's on the call because she wasn't able to find where, I'm not sure what kind of device she's using, but I think she would just like to speak to mitigation, maybe from a different aspect of mitigation from the school district standpoint.
Can we allow Cheryl Miller to unmute? CHER. Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just wanted to underscore the regional impact that these developments have for the school district. So the school district is a really good example of how all three governments impact one entity. And I think I would like to see going forward that the school is considered as part of mitigation. And in part because we've heard since the 90s how concerned or interested the community is if we are in a situation where we have to increase our facilities and we have to add buildings. And our biggest challenge has been when we are looking at expanding an alternative site instead of building on our current campus. We still, for decades now, have not been able to find an alternate, another school site, free market. And so when we think about mitigation, it would really be nice that we all work together to find a parcel, work towards having that parcel available, whether it's through land use or whatever. I don't know the details of the means, but when we get to that point, it'd sure be nice to develop a formula and figure out how we get there rather than in the moment when it hits us, suddenly panicking and not having anywhere to go. And then I think about what instigated this discussion was the Norwood having this large development, 200, 300 residents, and how that's going to impact their school. And at this point, since we're already looking at mitigation, or the county is, to consider the schools because they're getting ready to build a new school. And if they can have a projected idea of how many new students they're going to have, even 25 students for a small district is a big change, then they can plan for that as they're planning their new facility. So I know we're not getting into the detail now, but I want to be sure that that's always on the table for discussion.
Thank you, Cheryl. We'll ask the managers to consider that as they bring forward a proposal for some kind of coordinating entity or conversation.
Just had a question, Cheryl. When you were talking about the consideration of a new site, were you speaking about the west end or the east end?
So either. So like right now, Norwood is got their bond passed. They're going to be in the next 2 or 3 years building a new facility. So if they can have a projection of increased population, then they can plan for that. For us in particular, if we suddenly had an increase in our student body, we could be down the road looking at expanding our buildings. And currently, with the land we have available, we could only continue to build on the current site, which would actually take away, most likely, our only field. So, and I know the community at large, because we are such an integral part of the community, is concerned about those kind of things.
I thought your census was declining.
It is currently, but if you suddenly have a large development within the R1 school district, that could change. And we've had an influx of population up until this year. We've actually maintained our enrollment. This is the first year we've seen an actual drop, in large part because a large class graduated. But so statewide, there is a decline in student enrollment, K-12 students. But there's a couple of different things happening. I talked to a demographer just a few months ago for the state, and
Cheryl, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt you because
You're
we have
right.
2 more
Thank you.
agenda items, but I want you to know that you have absolutely been heard in terms of a parcel for the East End and projected impacts for enrollment, whether it be in Norwood or Telluride. Thank you so much for attending. And
no problem. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And now we are on to item 6G, Paul Weiser.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I just wanted to bring up quickly an issue that I have heard discussed multiple times over the last year or so, and that's this meeting in particular. I notice how many people are on this call at the moment and in person, and it's a lot of people who are dedicating their time to this particular effort. I've also seen firsthand a lot of people put in a lot of energy with respect to ideas that are brought forth in these meetings, only to see that time result in little to no action more than once. And so I have heard people suggest that maybe we don't have these meetings anymore. Now, I've discussed that with the 2 managers, discussed that with Zoe and Mike, and I don't think that we're quite there yet. But what I would propose is that we perhaps think about a way to assure that these meetings are worth everyone's time and lead to positive and tangible results in the future. And I think what Zoe and Mike and I have discussed is engaging a facilitator, not unlike what we have for the gondola, to assure that we have agendas that are properly coordinated, have meaningful agenda items on them, and that there is appropriate follow through and the appropriate staff assigned to those projects that are deemed worthy of everyone's time. So I just wanted to bring that forth to the group, and it is something that all the managers on here, John and others, can discuss further. But if anyone has any additional thoughts about that, we would love to hear it.
Looking for hands. Teddy.
Teddy Erico, mayor of the town of Telluride. Paul, I think it's a good idea. Anything that we can discuss as a group that can make these meetings better, like everything else that we do in the town of Telluride, we're always looking to be better. And so I think anything that holds accountability, creates better agendas, better discussions, I'm all for that further discussion.
Scott Pearson.
And thanks, Scott Pearson, Town of Mountain Village. What I have seen work effectively at the gondola is not only having a facilitator, but the work is really done leading up to the meeting. There are subcommittees that are digging in on specific issues, and then it's brought to the leadership group for a discussion and adoption, but you're not actually doing the groundwork at the big meeting. And so I think that for this to be effective, it needs to be on all 3 parts of the chain. The first is the prep, the second is the meeting itself, and then the third is the follow-up.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? I don't see any hands. I'm thinking back to a lot of work that Zoe Donnell did for us. And I'm wondering if that is what's inspiring this conversation, because we did come up with goals for this
group, and we came up with people who would lead work groups. And I will say myself, the county had stepped up and offered to lead a wildfire work group, and we just have not had the bandwidth. We haven't done it. Is that kind of what we're thinking about, is using that structure to guide us, or is there another thought?
Yeah, I don't think we need to throw that away, but I think we can give room for a facilitator to look at that and see how that could be used as a tool, or how we could build on that tool, or but I think to your point, we made it and then staff was like, we don't have the capacity.
No.
So here elected officials, and the elected officials were like, well, we don't have the capacity. So it kind of we definitely need another tool in the toolbox in order for us to really move forward on being effective with these meetings.
We do. And I don't know, though, the facilitator that, as I hear it from Paul, they wouldn't necessarily be doing that work, or could they be leading those work groups as well? Because I think you're right, staff and electeds, if we could have, we would have, and we haven't.
Yeah, I don't think, and Paul, I'm totally taking over, but I think we want to maybe engage a facilitator in their professional expertise and really see what they feel like would be a good path forward for us. So I don't want to fit our square peg into any round hole at this point.
Paul, what would you recommend for next steps, if it sounds like people are on board for this?
Yeah,
Those that have spoken. Is anyone opposed? Nope.
I think John, Zoe, Mike, and I can get together and think about what that will look like. We do have some folks in mind, but obviously want to be transparent about what we're doing, and so we can make that happen. Just to piggyback on what Zoe was saying, I mean, with the gondola, we certainly have third-party staffers who do some actual substantive work, but they rely heavily on the technical expertise of existing staff to produce the work product that you all ultimately see either at the subcommittee or leadership level.
Okay, this sounds like another thing the managers will discuss and get back to their council's commission and then to the IG meeting. I'm seeing nods. Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, last but not least, we have Matt Skinner. Matt, are you into the Zoom so you can share? Great, okay. And I want to say, I think this kind of a agenda item is really useful, as was the presentation by TSG, so that we all have an opportunity to hear the same information and updates, ask the same or hear the same questions. So take it away, Matt. We're scheduled to run till about 3:35, so that gives you about 20 minutes.
Great, I'll try to be, I know we're at the end here,
and just for anyone who may not be aware, Matt is the CEO of the Colorado Flights Alliance. And is
good
here.
to you all. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Hey, Matt.
I know you've all been, I like the camp setup here. Stand up for a sec, jig or whatever. I get that it's been a long one. I do have a moderately beefy deck, so I will try to be quick and get through it here. I'm just gonna push it. Let's see. So, but no, appreciate you having us all, and it's been a little while since we did update the full IG, and I'll pre-apologize to Mountain Village, as you've seen the bulk of this in my update to you all a week or two back. And with my Telluride one postponed another month, actually, the timing is good. So anyway, just want to give you guys an overview, a little quick national snapshot, where we're at, and then some trends that we're seeing summer and winter and overall. In short order, it's been a roller coaster of a year. We all know this, politically, bookings, etc. And we see it week to week. Our bookings are usually very kind of steady and in a pattern, and they've kind of been all over the place. And all kinds of conflicting metrics. On the one hand, tons of travel enthusiasm. On the other hand, a lot of concern over recession. Recession-proof travelers have been discussed at the higher end. And then we've also had a new sector kick up called the anti-luxury travel group. And I actually thought that was interesting, because one of the things they key on is authenticity, which is actually where we've hung our hat hard over time. And so just as a perspective goes, we came out of summer then just about flat. And we took that as a win. There were other folks who were down within our comp set, and we were coming off of 15% growth year over year the couple before. So solidifying that and coming in flat, we took as a win. And especially as I'll show you the larger trends. Winter right now, we have a little bit of added capacity, about the same, just up 3 to 4%. LAX, which we've been chasing for a while, is kind of one of the highlights, and some larger jets out of Houston. But we've seen a slower and softer, I guess, entry into the season. So ever since Labor Day, excuse me for a second, we've just been steadily behind. And not like leaking any more ground, but not gaining any ground. And so just running down about 5%. And this is coming off of a winter where we were off about 3%. We did have some weaker snow in the spring last year, but that's also going to blend into the trends here in a sec. First, I want to take you top line, just since I haven't seen this group in a while. We are an economic vitality and sustainability organization for Telluride Mountain Village and Montrose Western Slope. Our levers that we pull: air service, marketing, guest services, partnerships in town. We prioritize development through conversation with all those partners who are represented on our board and in the community. And of course, doing most that we can with the dollars we're allocated to provide a return for our communities. With that, our annual budget's about 5 to 5.5 million. We think this year will probably be 5.5, but we, like you, are looking at next year and probably thinking down around 5. About 75% of that is airline guarantees, 15% to marketing, and just 10% to admin overhead staffing, and that includes the guest services crew. Historically, restaurants and lodging prior to COVID were very even, but the lodging with, I guess, increased ADR would be a key piece to that, and rates has surged ahead of restaurants with that. And then you have Telski at about 9% and the city of Montrose at about 5%. And then a lot of voluntary businesses, the retail shops, the sporting goods shops, real estate, etc., all contribute as well. On average, we use, our 5 years, about $200 for every dollar spent in economic impact. That's a return. With our most recent study, and we're updating this right now, air service, what's the right word, sustains, drives, supports about 60% of our regional tourism economy. And within that mix, about 62% of the jobs, and that's for San Miguel County. They think that with the growth since COVID, that number is actually higher, but it's not the easiest thing to get at. So they're looking at it right now as we're working forward. But I think it gives a pretty good ballpark as to air and how it drives out here. This is the specifics. We're just getting the pieces of the report, so sorry, it's kind of hard to focus on. The green lines. Air service is bringing about 774 million in tourism economic impact alone. This doesn't count business development, other business travel locally, etc., into the region, and about 464 million of that is direct spend into direct and indirect into San Miguel County. A lot of the Montrose County and Uray County benefits are indirect, as in the businesses that we hire, the employees that we support, etc., up and down the valley. With that, this is our kind of barometer right here as we track ourselves against the taxes, the sales tax revenues in town, and the 2 towns in the county. And actually, I had the county lined up, but I need to go back, check a couple of things from a few years back in the tracking. But you can see the trends of the air passengers and the sales taxes in the town generally run hand in hand. With that, just quick, we bounce it off of the sectors to lodging, restaurant, retail, same thing, same trend. I'm going to be fast on this part today. Ultimately, over the last 10 years, we feel like we have provided very measured and sustainable growth and solid growth, we'll call it, at about 193%, 68% over the last 5 years. We've grown each season. The shoulders, we concentrated out of the centers where we can. We've got 4-year round flights now, etc., just the fun little highlights. The thing is, coming into 2025, though, we think that, and I'll get those results in about March, is that this is going to take a little dip after last winter, and then coming into this winter. And so we went looking and trying to figure out where and how this is all shaping up for us as a destination. This is just a visual on that. You can see when we bounce this against the comp set, we're over here on the left, that we have outpaced our comp set over the last 10 years. And over the last 5, we're above everybody but Hayden, who's had a very aggressive last couple of years.
Sorry, can you just tell us what's happening in this slide?
So this is the passenger growth.
Okay.
And so this is us. Hayden is Steamboat, Gunnison, Eagle is Vail. Sorry, I should have changed these up. Aspen,
That's okay.
Durango. And so Durango and Junction are different kinds of airports. They're business and population-based traffic. And then we also bounce ourselves, of course, against the tourism-based destinations and just group them here as our comp set goes. And so this is the growth in the light green bar over 10 years and the growth in the dark green bar over 5 years. and how we rate against that competitive couple of groups actually. And that's a good question because this is the graph heavy portion of our presentation today. When we look at the trends again, and you can see my mouse. So we take a look and you can see that our trend is nice and solid over 10 years. This is the annual numbers. Aspen's done very well. We've caught Junction, we've caught Durango. Eagle has spiked back ahead. Hayden's doing well, Gunnison, but we're very well positioned and nice even growth over this period. If we now drill down to post-COVID, and so the same graph. The green bar is 3 years and the light green is year over year. So in the green bar, we're actually in our comp set. We're not too far off for that 3-year annual growth. And then within this year, though, we're a little bit lagging behind the comp set. And this ties into where we were able to dig into this and ran into some flares coming into this winter. So we went back and looked at summer. You just saw this. We've had nice stair steps up over the seasons. I'm going to put it in the same graph. So you can see us in the middle with the summer. A nice solid growth arc, catching our competitors, almost catching Junction and Durango in the summer. Eagles jumped ahead up and down, Hayden, Gunnison, but our summer growth has been consistent and solid over these past several years. And this is where the flare came up, and it came up on a couple of levels coming into this winter. Is that you can see here, and we're in the middle of this one, is that the winter growth has not been moving ahead since COVID. And we came up a little bit and then we've been stepping down. And it's not big percentages. The ship is not sinking. We're not like in trouble, but we are leaking. And we are leaking when we look at it against our comp set. The rest of them have much more steady growth arcs. Hayden's a little up and down. This is actually a Southwest question that we both dealt with. And you can see it in there just to get specific. Junction and Durango are moving ahead again after some stagnation. And you know, this in perspective too, like Eagle, Jackson, and Aspen, Hayden on the left, and those are guys like 1 to 2 billion skier visits, right? Sun Valley and Gunnison on our right are like 300 to 500,000 skier, probably 400, 500,000 skier visits now. So we actually do very well for our air service for the amount of visitation that we're seeing. All right, let me go down. So we started to dig into the winter, and this is where this coming into this season, I had some very specific challenges. It started about 1.5 years ago as everybody had all this capacity coming out of COVID, and we've been fighting for the last 2 to 3 years to keep a hold of that capacity where we can. And about 1.5 years ago on one of our major routes, I was told we were not keeping up with the comp set. We've been losing and regaining capacity on that. And then coming into this winter, right beforehand, we had a couple of proposed capacity reductions on our 2 main routes. And they were going to take some of our larger jets and move them off of our route, at which point we very loudly dug our heels in and requested that that not occur. We were able to keep those larger jets. And at the very same time, I saw the rest of the finalized schedules for our comp set come out and see where their growth was moving ahead of our own. We gained a little bit this winter, but in general, there's been a large push across the board. You know, you can see Eagle over here kind of going, they got big jets from Denver like we did, and all of a sudden it's like, right? And so, but Aspen jumping ahead, Sun Valley's adding a bunch of American service, things like that. And to be told that, and in the course of this conversation, I was told again after this other route saying didn't keep up with our comp set, but we actually did not keep pace last March with our comp set. And that is absolutely something new. And so it started, you know, to really specify the worry. And so, sorry, it's tough to read up here, but on the right, if we look at that 3-year snapshot that everyone else is in double digits growth, either through that 3-year period or 1-year period, but we are down to flat over that time frame. And so we went looking for how and when in the season, and to keep this moving quickly, it's mainly in the middle weeks of the season, or it's that post-January to Presidents, where it's heavy group, it's heavy international, it's heavy marketing type customers, it's guy girl trips, etc. The non-family groups really in a lot of ways, and a little bit of group loss in December. So again, just trying to drill down further and further, we went and put it up against the destination skier visits. Now, before the pandemic, our air capacity and destination skier visits ran almost flat to each other. We had very accelerated growth through the pandemic. We wouldn't necessarily expect skier visits just to jump right on that train, but we would expect them to keep moving towards that capacity. And so what happened though in about 21, 22 is that the capacity went up and the destination skier visits came down. And this is even as opposed to the actual passengers increasing. And then that has continued to leak over the coming couple of years, where you can see we have plenty of air capacity, historically speaking, versus the skier visits, but the skier visits are not moving up in that part.
Can you just clarify what each line is? Cause the font's so
Okay,
small.
I should stop, sorry.
That's okay.
Blue is the seats.
Yeah.
Green is the skier visits, and red is the actual air passengers. And so the green line is the skier visits that are coming down, while we're actually trying to build it towards that blue line as in the historic trends. Just looking at, we started throwing things at the wall as to what might be affecting this, right? A little surge in 18 with the addition of the Epic Pass. And then coming into the pandemic, we lost Bill Jensen. It was at that point, and as this has been told to me, marketing at the ski resort had already been on the downward, and you guys know I used to run that department. Was already on the downward swing. And at that point, it was the end of all domestic marketing. We had also the staff, the international salesperson, dedicated staff gone, international marketing co-op that used to run with us is gone. Serious change to group product and the constraints under which they're able to sell. And even local lodging products went away, where you package lift tickets for lodgers, etc. So a lot of pieces of the puzzle coming off the board. And this has been a well-known conversation with ownership up there. And I want to say something very specifically out loud after the last meeting, is that the team at Telski has done a phenomenal job with what they've been given to work with. The couple of people who are left in group, there really is no marketing department left, but a couple of people they've actually hired a new person to run sales, which is great. And then all the way across, because this talks about delayed openings, et cetera, operations, et cetera. And so the team up there has absolutely done, and as we know this over time, everything that they can to put the best, possible experience out there. And these are executive ownership level discussions that we're having, that it's policy that we're encouraging a shift back in that policy. And so, with all these pieces of the puzzle, and the fact that what we've seen from our comp set is a massive acceleration out of COVID. Lots of marketing, they came out of COVID with the other strategy. And so sorry to mention here too, we actually as a destination stopped marketing for a year as well. Tourism board ourselves, we all stopped there. We had some delayed openings. There are always more like multiple factors, right? So in the scope though of what we're facing in the industry is that we are seeing, I put the right word as renaissance is too strong, but Deer Valley just doubled their entire ski resort skiable acreage and put 10 lifts in a year. Sun Valley has put in 5 lifts in 5 years. Jackson, $50 million gondola. Big Sky, $50 million gondola. Steamboat, $200 million base area. Winter Park, $2 billion into their match plan. They're a park. They're Denver City Park, actually, technically. And then what we've also seen with this, and this is obviously not science and very directional and indicative, but we're leaking in our national rankings. And so Condé Nast and Forbes, when I was there, and Post is what we kind of hung our hat on. We were ranked 1 and 2 in 2019. We're off of those 2 top 10 lists now. We dropped 5 spots in Ski Mag every year. These come up and down. There are plenty of other surveys. Those are the ones we kind of focused on. We are just trying to take this honestly as a whole as to what our position is in the marketplace. And it appears to us that in the marketplace right now, in winter specifically, we are getting outgunned. We are leaking market share to other folks. This is actually just something I grabbed from the tourism office. This is a comparison of DMO budgets. And you'll notice on the left that a couple of them are combined, like Aspen and Snowmaster, there's 2 of them. We are just below the median. And with the reason there's 2 arrows is the Telluride actual TTB budget and then what we add to help marketing. And then we're still below the median. And then every other destination has an entire ski resort sales and marketing budget of some size put on top of this. So we are outgunned. We are, put in the less than half zone. And so with that, then, we are worried in the marketplace as to how these trends are going forward. In a short nutshell, Teddy, good timing. We're all buttoned up. Back to where we started is that, when we sat down and had the indicators that we had coming into this winter, we felt it was our responsibility and time to raise our hand. That, annually we're seeing, a healthy destination. Our numbers are good. If flat is good for us, then that's great. But in the marketplace currently, we are losing traction against our concept, and we are down going into this. So that is the long and short of the kind of difficult part. And then the fun news to finish on is that summer is strong. We're actually going to gain back a bunch of our Chicago service next summer. Houston's expanding Memorial Day to Labor Day. We're going to have brand new LAX service. So very excited to announce that stuff. And summer continues to push ahead. And just want to have us, in a collective conversation on how and best we can compete and keep ourselves healthy in winter. With that, we just want to keep doing our job for you guys as CFA. You can always reach out to me directly. And always happy to take feedback and input and answer questions.
That's a lot.
That was a lot.
That was
Short.
good, though.
Yeah.
We've all seen a little bit of a preview on that in the newspaper, or at least I have. I would just ask that everybody who made a presentation today could please get those maybe to Carmen. That'd be great. And then Carmen can send them around to the various jurisdictions and they can distribute that, because there's a lot of detail in a lot of our presentations. Are there any questions for Matt? He ended right on time.
Matt, I was just curious, are you seeing, when you talk about MTJ and text, are you seeing major differences? Obviously, we've seen Montrose's expansion of terminals and service. As far as if we don't aggregate them, are we seeing a big difference in our local airport versus Montrose?
If I had your question right,
Yeah, it wasn't real quick.
but
I think you know what I mean.
Like, yeah, Telluride is just a sliver of that service. Montrose is definitely the heavy lifter. I mean, we throw them in together, but if I took Telluride out of it, it wouldn't affect the tracking by more than a couple of points. And with that, sorry, the second half of kind of what was buried in there, like our airport expansion couldn't have been more timely. And so we're in decent shape now. We're already like hitting our head a little bit on occasion, but we're pretty good there right now as compared. But there's a lot of airport improvements that have gone on through the region over the last 10 years as well. So you were alluding to, but there's more to come actually.
Maria Stark, you want to grab a microphone from Zoe maybe?
Oh boy, yeah.
You mentioned earlier something about the luxury flight market, and I didn't really hear you differentiate that. So I'm curious if there's anything to say about that.
Yeah, no, great question. We've talked about this a little bit over the last year, called the recession-proof traveler, and that we tend to skew towards the top, well, 50% for sure, but even towards the top 20 and 10% of national demographics that visit us. And there's been a solid trend through the nation that 20% has not been materially affected by the economic ups and downs and worries that are going on. And most of that concern is in the 0 to 70% group who we're starting to see affect travel behaviors more. So we're a little more insulated here as a higher end destination, but it's certainly something to continue to monitor.
And one other quick question. It sounds like most of this relates to concerns about marketing budget from the, all parties. But I'm wondering if some of the concern is around the bad press that has happened recently.
I'm probably not going to comment on the bad press. None of that helps, right? The other piece of that is not just marketing. It's, looking at all the capital expenditures, et cetera, and everybody putting a new shine on their resorts, is that I know it's been a large topic of conversation here in this destination, is that how are we going to accomplish that for Telluride as well? And then there are all the other pieces that are related to this that you governments all support and the public money all supports: transit, housing, the resort infrastructure itself that needs to progress along as American Skiing Company and many other, I'm gonna date myself, and many others have learned in this industry is that if you don't keep up with that, it will come back and affect you in the later years. And so it's those pieces along marketing, promotion, infrastructure, et cetera, not to repeat. That makes sense.
Anybody left online? Yes, we still have 29 people. Any hands online? I don't see any. Sadly, I guess this isn't a big surprise.
I'm just impressed that there's still 29.
We have reached the end of our agenda. So do we have to take a motion to adjourn, or can we just adjourn? I think this is not super official. I'll just call it. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back in 2 months, hosted by not sure which town, but that's be our next IG meeting. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Village.